So here we are again, um, in the third of the four lessons in the Foundation Month. Um, and in this lesson, we're going to try and reclaim even more of your ability to learn um, in the way that babies learn, the way that you learned as a baby in the first 3 to 4 years of your life. In that time, although it's hard to imagine, the learning had nothing to do with words, not reading, not writing, and really not symbolic. The learning had to do with what things look like. At some point in that learning, perhaps in your third or fourth year, you started to maybe learn some symbol. And you might be able to maybe recognize the symbol, the Roman letter A, the capital A. And you might have said A. But you didn't know what a letter was, you didn't know what a word was, you certainly couldn't read or write, and what you were doing when you looked at it is you had a symbol connected to a sound. All right, so in this third lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to take this even further. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about those things that we've been talking about in the previous two things, the character type babies and the life story of the letter A. And we're going to take what is a very recent drawing in emergence, a full-fledged logically geometric map, and the learning circle, or the circle of learning. And in this map, which is very much connected to this series of what we're doing, in this map is a visual dialogue, a visual journey, a visual history of the process through learning. Now, it's not a technique. It simply says that, in general, that there is a path for learning, and that there are what are called 4 stations, like 4 buildings that you're in, and there are 4 indoors and 4 outdoors, so 8 doors. And already your mind is going blank because there's no picture. And it's important that you notice it's not because you don't understand in terms of like any lack in you, it's because there are no pictures. So, as we begin, the first thing to remember is that there are 2 kinds of learning, as you have been hearing from me. There is the kind that you memorize things and then you recall the memorized things. That's school, from 2nd grade on roughly, all the way through a doctoral degree. And then there's the kind that we use in the Emergence University, which is the visual first, conceptual second learning. Again, a phrase that will make your mind go blank. But it is a learning where first you learn to see a picture. I don't mean a photograph. I mean a living kind of a picture that at least it has a few steps in the picture, like slides, and you can see change. That feeling of change, that experience of change, is what allows us to see something coming alive. If it's a still photograph, you can imagine it coming alive, I suppose, if you make the effort. But the photograph itself it's called a still picture. Stillness, no change. With the drawings in emergence, they almost all involve some kind of movement. So think about the movement from the character type baby 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on. And then when you looked at the final sequence, you could see how these 4 things differ, how they are similar. You know, the 4 different numbers on the onesies, 1 to 4, things like that. In the second one, we have 5 steps in the life story of the letter A, coming from an ox's head, a drawing, to a symbol. In this lesson, we are going to even do it in a more primitive way with a very complex drawing, this learning circle, and I am going to ask you to make a number of pauses in the video and try to see what you can see. So in a moment, the first of the drawings of the learning circle I'm going to bring them up, and in that first drawing, I want you to, when it comes on, I want you to pause the drawing. And I want you to see the shapes, notice the shapes, notice the colors, notice any lines, and so on. See how much you can look at and notice. And now within the drawing, look for parts that are opposites. This is something that is critical, like the two sides of a letter A, the left and the right side, you know. In the drawing, though, there will be a lot of these. And so just look at the drawing. Now, the second thing is that these drawings, in order for you to know them, they have to be learned similarly to how you, when you were a child, learned what a cumulus cloud is. So I remember laying in a field of grass. I must have been 4 or 5 years old, and I'm looking up at this beautiful sky, and there is an older boy, perhaps teenage boy, who is with me, and I think it might have been one of my older cousins, and we're looking up at the clouds, and he's getting me to imagine seeing different animals and so on in this. So I learned that day that those round puffy clouds are called cumulus clouds. I couldn't write the word, I couldn't spell the word, but the sound got attached to what I was seeing, and what I was seeing got attached to kind of like being able to draw, like the Oxus said, I could basically draw cumulus clouds with some curved lines near each other. Okay, so did I have to memorize what the cumulus cloud looked like? No, that's ridiculous, because it's changing every minute. So what are you going to memorize? There's no way you could even do it if you tried. So this is important, because memorizing and recalling information is not learning for us in emergence. What is? The learning that occurred when I looked at the cumulus cloud, and it got to be inside me at 4 or 5 years old, and now at 75, I don't have to work to see it again. So what am I doing? What I'm doing is I am rediscovering the cumulus cloud yet again. Not remembering, rediscovering. How do I know I'm rediscovering? Well, because even as I'm telling it to you, can you see the surprise on my face? I am yet again surprised at this beautiful changing shape, and that it's recognizable. I can see the difference between that and other simple things like a tree or a dog, but I could also see the difference between those clouds and the kind of straight line ones, you know. At that point I didn't know that there was a name to them or a kind, but the puffy ones were the first ones, because the puffy ones were the artists in the sky drawing dogs and cats and faces, and that was just miraculous. See the surprise on my face? I am rediscovering it as I tell you. I am not remembering. Remembering is memorizing. You hear the words are the same root. Memorizing and then recalling. And I, 2 months ago or before, probably would have said I would have described this as remembering. But I have realized that that is incorrect, and that rediscovering is more accurate. And that means that all those things that I thought I had to memorize, oh, what a horribly unpleasant, painful effort that is, will-powered, you know, over and over again, looking away, can I recall it, looking back, looking away, can I recall it, or sounds, or whatever. So memorizing and recalling is not learning. It temporarily gets into a part of your mind. And you know, at times you are surprised by something you're seeing, and that stuff sticks. That stuff is emergent learning. But it's not the same as doing it on purpose, limiting how you learn to visual first, conceptual second learning. And those words, while they're big, just simply mean seeing a picture and a second picture and how these things change. Being able to step into a scene, even if the scene is on a page of paper, a drawing, but being able to step into that scene and see it come alive. And in that way, being surprised by what you see, the changes, and never having to make an effort to remember. A candle flame is yet another one of these things which I don't know when I learned. I think that I learned it probably around 4. But what just happened? I just pictured the first picture that came to mind of a candle flame. I was just surprised. I hadn't realized it till right now. I just discovered that likely the first candle flame that I ever saw was on a birthday cake for me. The number 4 popped into my head. I don't know that's true. I don't care. It's information. It's unimportant. But the idea that a candle flame and the first candle on a birthday cake, and that I was just learning to count at 4, and there were 4 candles. All of that I'm rediscovering now. I have never had this as something I have said. Some people will say, I don't believe you, or that's odd. But the truth is that I have this surprise on my face that identifies something as a discovery. There are no discoveries without surprise. That's what a discovery is, a surprising identification, seeing a pattern, something visual, not logic, visual, a pattern. And all the things I've mentioned are the things I refer to as fractal patterns, which is in and of itself a whole deep concept. But just know that the examples I gave, the cumulus cloud and the candle flame, they were things that once I knew, I didn't have to memorize. I didn't memorize then. And once I knew them, wherever they were, I could recognize that pattern in other places, in other skies, not laying in a field, looking at a movie, campfires, and all the other things that derive from that first seeing that candle flame. Okay, so let's do the learning circle, and now what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to put up a slide, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try to see as much as you can see in the video. In the slide. And try to look past any words there. There are not many words. In the past 2 lessons, there were quite a few words there, and I was trying to get you to learn how to overlook words, how to see the drawing even in the presence of words, and how to notice your own urges to memorize the words on the page. Hopefully by this 3rd lesson you've gained some of that skill, and so as the slides come up, and there are going to be a few of them, just try to look at the slide, pause it for whatever amount of time you need to look at the slide. Do not try to memorize anything. Just look at it. What does it look like? What shapes are there? Colors? Does anything interest you? Is your eye drawn to something? That's a lot. So, first drawing coming up, and as it comes up, please pause, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, in a minute we're going to look at the second drawing, and hopefully in the first drawing it made an impression on your body. You could feel it. When I look at the central goal thing, there are many things that come to mind. It reminds me of a lot of things, but I can see it. I've seen it before. That's something I know. In fact, I've seen all of the elements in the drawing before, someplace. In this combination, I don't think so, but something similar. Okay, now here comes the second drawing, And just notice what is added and what's the same. So pause the video and spend a minute or two looking at these things, and do not try to memorize anything, just try to notice what's different. If you can't see anything, that's what you see. Okay, and you know you can always go back later after you go through this the first time, and you can go through it as much as you need. But this first time, please just do the best you can with one viewing. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so we're at the third drawing in this sequence of drawings. I am not sure what you're going to see in this drawing. Neither of you. You've seen two drawings, and again, I want you to pause the video and see if you can see what's been added. But when you look for what's been added, please try to keep seeing what you've already seen, because you're trying to see if anything has changed in the drawing. So added, subtracted, shape changed, color different, or not. All in the service of you trying to be like a young child who's learning from what you see. Okay, see you in a moment. Okay, you've done 3. We're going to move on to 4. And really the instructions are the same each time, so basically not much to tell you. Symbols, positions, shapes, and lines. And as you pause this next drawing, drawing number 4 in this sequence, try to see what's been added, what's been deleted, if anything, what shapes are there, what's changed, what's the same. That's your entire job. You're not looking to memorize, you're just looking to see change. That's it. And so, here you go. Slide number 4. See you in a bit. Okay, we are back and about to look at slide number 5. We're getting there. I think there were 6 slides, so you're more than halfway done. But again, simple. When the 5th slide comes up, pause it and try to see what's changed. If there are any words, please try to ignore them, but just look at the shape of the text. Imagine it as black markings and you just want to see the shape. But don't read, please, and don't try and memorize, and don't try and figure out from the words what this drawing means. Please don't. Please just try to absorb the drawing as if it's a candle flame you're seeing for the first time. And so, here's the next slide. Please pause, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we are at the final slide in this sequence. How are you doing? Are you noticing any changes? Are you seeing additions? How's your compulsion, we all have it, to look at the words, to get what's the meaning of this drawing, and looking at the words and meaning before you come to learn to see the picture? That's the old learning. Memorize and recall. Nope. That's not real learning. But it is a heck of a thing to learn the way that you used to learn when you were young, where You were in that period of life where you learned more things in a brief time than ever any other time in your life you learned. Wow, all the things you learned. And every one of them was seeing visual change. And then only later did you maybe attach a word sound to it, and then ultimately, much later, a word or a phrase. So here comes the sixth drawing, the final drawing. And again, try to notice what's the same, what is different, what's changed, what hasn't changed. Try and let your body just sense it. Is this drawing, for instance, easier? Does it feel easier to look at than the previous drawing? Or more difficult? Or no change at all? Anyway, pause the video and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so you've now gone through the sequence of 6 drawings, and from the first drawing, which has no writing, I think the second one added some numbers, so symbols. Numbers are symbols. A number itself, I don't know if you've ever thought about it. Like the letter A represents a sound, the number 1 represents a quantity, but it's not directly connected to something in the real world unless you add that in. 1 is a symbol that represents a very complex, abstract concept. Counting things. 1. There's one of them. Doesn't say what it is. There's no picture. That's why that stuff is hard. It's removed from life. There's no visual material. But in this case, there's the visual number itself, the symbol. And then we moved through, I don't know, stations and doors and some writing and then some more writing. Okay. Why this is included in this sequence in the foundation month is because this is the nature of learning. And seeing that learning is not a sequence of steps that you acquire, 1, 2, 3, and so on. No, each of us has our own pattern of movement on that circle. We skip stations, we start at doors and don't leave. Every human being has a different pattern in that circle. And like all things in emergence, by learning to see the learning circle itself, by learning to see the patterns and have a sense of what moving in the different places means, you can add that in to the learning you already do. You can improve your ability to learn tremendously by learning the learning circle. That is not what we're doing in this lesson, though. In this lesson, all that I'm trying to do is get you to begin to absorb this idea, visual first, conceptual second, see what's on the page visually, and then look between drawings and see what changes, what doesn't change, what's added, and so on. Because that's the movement. When you are drawn into a scene in a movie theater and you forget you're in the theater, you're seeing things change. It's as if you're in the scene, you're observing it, you're watching it. You're not in a theater. And the same thing is necessary to learn these kinds of patterns, that all of which, the entirety of emergence is based on these patterns. Candle flames and cumulus clouds are really a lot like character types and social priorities and these patterns in emergence. Without pictures for them, though, they're really hard to understand. In fact, at best, you memorize them, you forget them. When you're put on the spot, when I ask you what's a character type, if your mind goes blank, you have no picture. That's literally true. If your mind goes blank, you have no picture. So, as we end this, a reminder, there are 2 kinds of learning. You're beginning to know what they are. One kind of learning, though, that memorize and recall learning is called outer layer learning. I may have mentioned this before. And outer layer learning is impersonal, because outer layer learning has no visual material. Some of the things, concepts and so on, words and phrases and so on, but they only have a meaning, those things, if you have a picture first. And this is a big thing to say. And the other kind of learning is inner layer learning. Notice the oppositeness. And this inner layer learning is personal, as opposed to outer layer and impersonal. And the difference between these, even though those words say something vague, the real difference is with the outer layer learning, the impersonal learning, there's never a picture. And the inner layer learning, the personal learning, there's a picture. And how can that be? Well, because the outer layer learning does groups of generalizations. There's never a specific time and place and a specific action. Well, it can refer to the type of thing, but it's not an exact real-world occurrence. And the inner layer learning, the personal learning, where you can only picture one event at a time. You can picture lots of changes in the event, but they occur in a sequence, like the letter A, like the evolution of the character type babies, like the changes in the sequence of drawings in the circle of learning. They change. And what you are seeing, what embeds in your mind, is the patterns of change. Anyway, we're at the end of number 3, and I will see you in the next talk. Wish you well.